Hey y'all, this is Culture Soup, where tech, culture, and business collide. It's a podcast that spoons up everything hot from social media. I'm your host, L. Michelle Smith, and each episode we bring you some of the most notable and not yet notable thought leaders in tech, business, and culture. The winds of change have been blowing, and it's been more like a gale force wind than a breeze. But you know what? It's time to embrace it, right? So, a couple things are changing around my company. You may have heard on the Culture Soup podcast, the Coaching Corner episode, that there's some changes coming to that episode. But today, I want to tell you about how the 30-minute mentor is changing. The brand is giving way to a new look and feel and name, NSC Elearning. That's right, over the course of the last almost 2 years, we have amassed enough content to have a complete library that's growing by the day of audio cast, audio conferences, master classes, webinars, digital content, e-guides, cheat sheets, worksheets, you name it, we've got it all. And a lot of it is free. Some of it is for pay. But we have gathered it all in one space on lmichellesmith.com/NSC_elearning so that you can see what we have, and we're adding to this library every day as my team sorts through what we have. It's a lot, y'all. And we're going to start to package much of it into online courses. And again, much of it is free, so never fear. But on the other hand, there is going to be some that cost. In fact, when we start to put it together in packages for online courses, you will pay not too much, but some. And you'll begin to see that we'll have some low cost of entry subscription-based digital learning packages that will come out very soon. I'm very excited because this folds in the coaching and consulting that we're doing under the NSC brand. And of course, NSC stands for No Silos Communications. That's all I got. So I wanted to share that with you. You can go to lmichellesmith.com/NSC_elearning, and I'll see you online. All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Here I am. We're later than we expected, probably about 90 minutes later. They finally got the stream going. I'm going to be abbreviated tonight because I actually spent the time that we were down recording the audio podcast that I'm going to post here any minute now so you can hear what this is all about. But today I kick off a series of episodes for the Culture Soup podcast called What Does the Civil Rights Movement Look Like in the Workplace? You may be familiar with what has happened over the last couple of weeks, the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Tragically, today he was laid to rest. You probably caught some of his funeral online. It was moving. I understand that some very famous people donated so that he could have a really great homegoing, and it was spectacular, the bits that I saw. But since his murder, we've seen our country, as well as other countries, 15 others around the world, that have exploded in protest. And I've lost track of how many days it's been, but it's been more than a dozen days of nonstop protesting, most of it peaceful, on the idea of systemic racism. Now, you've heard them say institutionalized racism, systemic racism. That's not just about police officers. Did you pick up on that? When you say systemic racism, you're talking about the very fiber of our country, of our world, and many of the colonized countries that are out there, they feel the same thing. But the United States is very different. You may have seen me write that I've been tired since 1619. That's when the first slave ship made it to the East Coast here in the United States. And that's when my ancestors came to the United States of America. And yes, there has been progress. But when you have systemic racism, it means that the very fabric of what this country was built on, our infrastructure, it has racism built into it. So there's an implication for the workplace. I like to look at it like this. I've always said that there's a straight line between who you are at work and who you are at home. It's all the same. You can't separate it. So if people have been concerned about Black employees and what they're going to experience when they go back to work and how they're feeling, how about the other people? Whether they be allies or whether they're not, they all go to work too. So we're talking about an organization in corporate America that is built on racist thinking. Whoa. Okay, you're like, stop, Michelle. You just said corporate and racism. Yeah, I understand why you would tell me to stop. Because that's a word that has just been a no-no inside the organization. And we've seen a lot of companies come to the forefront and make statements, whether they were lit like Ben & Jerry's, like all the way lit, or they're just bland like most everybody else is, or they were just downright not true like the NFL. And you had Roger Goodell come later and try to clean it up a bit. That's a whole other Culture Soup podcast. He left some things out. But you had a lot of organizations that were putting out statements. And the focus, and let me also say, you had people making some pretty sizable donations. Great. But the focus was on the outside, not on the inside. And the writings that I've seen about looking out for your Black colleagues centered around the idea of, well, how do you feel since you saw this George Floyd murder and Ahmaud Arbery, and since you know about Breonna Taylor? Talk to us about that. And here's the problem. The problem is that we as African Americans, as Black people in general, because you're going to talk about the entire diaspora that is here in the United States, all of us don't have that slave lineage, okay? Some of us came from other places like the Caribbean, like Africa, like other places, but we're Black, okay? That's how we're united. When you start to address the oppressed and then ask us to fix the problem or speak into the problem while the problem is still going on, people, we're exhausted, okay? We're exhausted. There are people like me who it's our calling to support people who are out there trying to do the best they can. I'm going to speak on it even if I'm tired. But for everybody else, is it really fair to call on your Black employees to carry the weight in this moment and not just talk to you on the inside about how they're feeling unless they just want to? Or even do it externally. Is it really something that we should be doing? Here's the thing. If Black employees who are oppressed and they're coming to work every day and they're feeling some kind of way, how's everybody else feeling? Now we have allies, and then we have people who aren't necessarily allies. That's your entire network, okay? And it stands to reason that whatever there is outside of your organization is inside your organization too, which comes to the problem. There are racists in your workplace. Woo! Okay, Michelle, you're really going there. Yeah, let's talk about this. We've known this though. We just called it something different. We called it implicit bias. We called it unconscious bias. We've called it conscious bias. We've called it microaggressions. It's kind of code. We've known that there's a problem. The thing about implicit bias is this. You can say, and by research, it tells you that everybody has it. And that's one way around the idea. But racism is different. It is a part of implicit bias because you have to have implicit bias to get to be a racist, but you have to have the power to literally inflict it on other people. And that's how we get to Amy Cooper. Okay? Same day as George Floyd. Can you believe it? Same day, May 25th, 2020. Someone who does not see herself as racist. Yeah, went all out racist on Christian Cooper simply because he asked her to leash her dog. Now, today's episode actually talks about what we need to be talking about to people like the Amy Coopers who go to work every day and probably are very caring around people that aren't like her. Okay, let's just level set here. And we're also talking to allies who've been in the fight all this time, who've been walking the talk and walking the walk every day. And then you've got people who've decided that, you know what, this is very revealing and I don't want to be on that side of history. I want to be an ally. These are new allies. And then finally, I'm talking to the Black employees. I do all of this in a bundle on my website called Leading Through the Movement, thus the graphic. And so I want to share with you a little bit about that website and what's on the website and what you can do to access it. It's at lmichellesmith.com. I'm sharing my screen with you right now. And let's see here. Let's go to the main page. Yeah. All right. So if you go to the landing page, lmichellesmith.com, scroll all the way down, you'll see an image that looks just like this. It says Leading Through the Movement. Just click on it, okay? And I've gathered all the video content, all the articles that I've written. I've put them all in one place so that you can explore on your own. Some of the video content, just so you know, are full episodes of the Culture Soup podcast. There were actually 2 of them in the past 2 weeks. One with Jared Hill, you know, the guy that busted Melania for plagiarizing Michelle Obama. Yes, he's a pop culture and political reporter, and he has his own podcast called Fanti. And he and I talked about this whole civil rights movement and how exhausting it's been, put on top of COVID-19. Now look at this. 1 in 3 deaths, 1 in 3 cases of COVID-19 are Black people. So we're already watching our family members die, our friends die. And then here we have to look at life as we know it happening, unfolding again on somebody's device, on the news, and we have to ask ourselves, is it going to end the same way the other ones did with no action? So we're tired, people. We're tired, okay? There's nothing else I can say other than we are exhausted. And please have a little empathy with your Black brothers and sisters, because we are expected to show up on Monday morning and still smile the way we did before George Floyd. Think about that. Would you be able to do it? Okay. So if you scroll down, there's some other episodes there. There's also some videos of me that I did on Instagram and LinkedIn that talk about some of these topics. And just so you know, there's also a playlist there of protest music, some of my favorites that I've curated for you. But the most important thing are these articles. And there are a few of them, more than a few. I actually added one on yesterday. The first one is to corporate leaders, especially those who are entrusted with work culture, okay? That doesn't mean you have to be in HR. It doesn't even mean that you have to be in D&I. It can mean that you run a team in the technology organization. It can mean that you're over a business unit. It means you run something, okay? And you're in charge of what people are feeling like when they come to work. This article, I'll click through to it, is called What Will You Actually Do? Now, the first thing that comes to mind is the statements, and I mentioned there have been a lot of them, but actually outward facing and not necessarily inward facing. I've seen some really compelling posts on LinkedIn that say, okay, I saw your Black Lives Matter graphic, company X. Let me see your board. Let me see a list of your board members. How many of them are Black? Let me see a list of your executives. How many of those are Black? These are real questions because, you know, that leadership pipeline for Black Americans, is just about non-existent. A few people make it through. A handful of people make it through. I mentioned that Ursula Burns, who was the last black female CEO of a Fortune 500. That's back in 2016 when she retired. We haven't seen one since. And black men in general, the rest of the black population, represent about 1% of the C-level leaders in the Fortune 500. So it's dismal, y'all. That means that unlike a lot of people, we can't start off in a company and wind up in the C-suite. That means even if we jump around, chances are we won't wind up in the C-suite. And so you see that black women have started businesses more than anybody out there. And the reason gets back to some research and Catalyst that shared with us in 2017 that many of us are jumping ship from corporate to start our own businesses because, as the U.S. Census has pointed out, we have more advanced degrees than any other group out there. We're over-credentialed. We're more than suited for these roles. We're just tired of what's going on in corporate. So it may be time for us to call it exactly what it is. And in this article, I talk about, let's say the word, racism. Say it. We've been avoiding it. We've been calling it every other thing. We've been embedding it in the idea of implicit bias so that we don't hurt anyone's feelings. We talk about white fragility in another one of these articles here, but this one gets down to actually naming the issue and then solving the issue. Do you understand that if you can't name your problem, you can't solve your problem? So we need to call it what it is. Now, there's some other things in this article. I'm not going to drain this, but you can go there and see what it's about. That's for leaders. And then we have another article that I released pretty soon after George Floyd was killed. And it said, have you checked on your black colleagues and friends? Now, I know I've been on TikTok and I've seen a lot of people posting the cute little videos where it's like, ever since this happened 2 weeks ago, my phone has been blowing up. But I think these types of articles have been reverberating because in the beginning, a lot of black professionals were not hearing from their white friends and colleagues. I can say that mine have reached out and I'm very, very excited about that. They're good people. I know that they were walking the talk before any of this happened anyway. So, but we have some new allies out there that are just trying to get a feel for what it is like to even be in this whole situation and act on behalf of their black colleagues. I have a letter for them as well. The final article is Take a Walk in My Shoes. And it talks about having to push through the fear and the white fragility. And what is that? Because there's a whole book on it. It's not even written by a black person. It's written by a white woman. You have to understand what it means. Some people see it and they're like, oh, those are some of those liberal words. But listen, all it means is that when people who are oppressed or underrepresented talk about the problems that they have, you feel some kind of way about it. And it's not even your party or picnic, but you just don't want to hear it. Great example of it. Remember 3 years ago or so when Beyonce had all her dancers dressed up in the little Black Panther little outfits, leotards and everything. And they walked out, they marched out on the stage and they did a whole Black Lives Matter tribute. And I liked it. Look, I'm not even a Beyonce fan, but I was like, yeah, it was resonating. But there were some of the people that were out there were like, what is she doing? Why is she doing it? There's no place for that. This is the Super Bowl. What is she thinking? What is she feeling some kind of way? Because they felt like, one, they weren't invited to the party. How could you do that, right? You have to understand the way privilege works. Privilege really is about centering someone, okay? Centering someone. And I say someone because you can have black privilege. Stand in the middle of Howard University. Be a student there and feel your black privilege when you're there. Come outside of that bubble. It's a different thing. If you were to just fly to Ghana, you might feel some sense of black privilege because you're centered suddenly. And I have to say, Black Americans probably aren't as centered as the Ghanans that are there. But when we're in corporate America, when we're in the United States of America, whiteness is centered. So if anyone who is an other, who is not surrounding and valuing these people the way the structure is set up, steps outside of that and centers themselves and their issues, this is problematic when it comes to white fragility. It makes you feel like you are oppressed. And there is a line in there, and some of you have seen my TikTok that says, equality feels like oppression when you're privileged. Now, to even make that statement means that I, as an underrepresented group member, has to feel some degree of empathy for this person to even begin to communicate with them. Now, you may say, okay, well, I can't empathize with the racist. Listen, if you're going to try and have courageous conversations instead of just barking at somebody, the first thing you need to understand is how they feel. And this is where we get to cultural intelligence quotient. Today's Rockstar Leadership tip said this: IQ and EQ are useless without CQ. CQ being cultural intelligence quotient. And in this environment, in this new mass market, we all need to have cultural intelligence, because the way we're going to win those allies who may be on the brink of just saying, you know what, that was somebody's son. What if that was my son? But won't quite say Black Lives Matter. Do you know that there are people who voted for the guy that's up there right now who are marching today? I'm telling you it's possible, but you shouldn't let certain things get in the way of these courageous conversations, which is part of the theme here for the fourth article. It's called, What Do I See If They Don't Hear Me? This is so important. Do you know that the term Black Lives Matter, I'm talking the verbiage, okay? I'm very much a part of the movement, all right? That phrase can turn somebody completely off. Not saying it's right, not saying it's right at all. You know those people who just automatically say, all lives matter. Like, it's a reflex. The minute you say it, that's what I'm talking about, okay? You can't say that to them and expect more than an all lives matter back. Now, some people have been pretty good with these analogies. There's some beautiful ones. There's one around a burning house. You know, there's one house in the neighborhood that's burning and the rest of the houses aren't burning. And you know what? Why aren't you watering my house? You know, putting the water on my house? Well, yours isn't burning. Kind of like Black Lives Matter. This is why all lives matter. You can't just say it, right? And then you see the ones that are like the dinner table. Bob hasn't gotten served, but everybody else got served. Bob needs food. You know, this analogy. And then there was a pastor from Hillsong Church that used a really great one around the Sermon on the Mount where, you know, Jesus said, blessed are the poor in heart. And somebody says, well, Jesus, isn't everybody blessed, right? Okay, so you get it. Beautiful analogies. But doesn't it make you wonder that even after people hear that, they still understand it, but they're still saying no? How do you get around that? Well, first of all, you need to know not everybody's going to come around the way you think. But there are people that are there who have a fighting chance. And for those people that you know have a good heart, but just misguided, here's some things that you can do. What can the other party relate to? You need to ask yourself that. Here's another one. What's important to them? Look, I'm not by any means a conservative, okay? If that's the way you're going to call it. But I believe in God, family, and country. And you know what? A lot of them do too. You need to find that common ground and talk in those terms. Just let me caution you, as an elite communicator, there are words that you can use that will shut somebody completely down, and you will not have the opportunity to make whatever little progress you might make. You can still support the movement. and not use certain words. Does that make sense? Very important. There are some other articles here that I want you to check out. I'm not going to drain all of them. In fact, I promised that we would actually make this an abbreviated episode because, you know what? We're late. But for those of y'all that are still watching, let's see here. I want to make sure that you know that NSC Elearning is up and running. And in that video, I talked about courses. We launched our first online micro course just last week. I'm excited about it. It takes you about a week to pull off. And if you go right now and use the code at the bottom of the screen, you can get $150 off. That means it's 99 bucks for, I think there are 3 webinars, 2 or 3, an audio cast, their cheat sheets, their 3-minute reads, their videos, their anecdotes from me, and you get a live coaching at the very end. And you get a certificate of professional development. This is all about your personal brand. And you may be saying, well, Michelle, does it make sense for us to be talking about personal brand during this crisis? You call it the 3 beasts of the apocalypse. You know what? Yes. Because if you don't have a strong brand coming out of the situation or even in the middle of the situation, you're just going to be another square on a Zoom call. Do you really want to be that? Do you want to have options when you come out of this? Do you want to have options right now? You need to be working on your personal brand. So go by my website, lmichellesmith.com. Scroll down. You're going to see the micro course icon down there by the leading through the movement. You'll see it. Click on that or go to e-learning. You can click on e-learning. lmichellesmith.com/e-learning will get you there too. And it's called the Personal Brand Builder Jetpack Micro Course. And I hope you'll take it. I hope to see some of y'all there. Y'all, it's time for me to wrap. Let's stay connected. Here are all the places you can get to me, okay? I am on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Okay. And then also LinkedIn. So there's everywhere to find me. And there's my website, lmichellesmith.com. You can find the Culture Soup podcast at theculturesoup.com. On Instagram and Twitter at The Culture Soup, and on Facebook at The Culture Soup Podcast. Until next week.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a production of No Size Communication, LLC.